I had always believed that my life with Amber was perfect. We were the ideal couple, living in the sun-drenched luxury of Miami, both successful in our respective careers. I ran a thriving interior design business, and Amber, with her sharp mind and impeccable style, worked as a consultant for a major financial firm. We made an excellent team, even though we had our separate worlds. Amber was the social butterfly, always attending business functions, galas, and networking events. She thrived in those environments. She had a way of drawing people in, making them feel important, while maintaining an air of exclusivity. I, on the other hand, preferred the quieter, more reflective aspects of life. I was content to work long hours in my office, finding peace in the designs I created. We had a balance that worked for us, or so I thought. One Wednesday night, Amber told me she was going to attend one of her weekly events at the Ritz Miami, a luxury hotel known for hosting professionals who'd made their mark in the business world. I was fine with it. In fact, I was relieved. I didn't have to dress up, make small talk, or get lost in the crowd. I had work to do anyway. I had been burning the midnight oil for weeks, trying to wrap up a big project before the end of the month. But as I sat alone in the quiet of our home, the thought of her at that glitzy event kept nagging at me. I trusted her, of course, but there was always a small part of me that wondered about the type of people she interacted with at these events. What kind of conversations did she have? Was I the only one she spoke to about certain things? That tiny spark of curiosity started to grow in the back of my mind. After a couple of hours, something inside me told me to go. I hadn't planned on going, but the urge was almost irresistible. What if there was something more to this event than Amber had led me to believe? I shook my head at the thought. Amber had never given me a reason not to trust her. But still, something felt off. I decided to drive over to the Ritz-Carlton, just to see for myself. Maybe it was the exhaustion from working late, or maybe it was just a deep-seated feeling that I couldn't shake. Whatever it was, it gnawed at me. I parked in the hotel's underground lot and walked into the grand lobby. The space was lit with crystal chandeliers, the kind that reflected light like diamonds. The air was thick with the hum of professional chatter, the clink of glasses, and the occasional burst of laughter. Everything about the place screamed money, success, and exclusivity. As I scanned the room, my eyes naturally fell on Amber. She stood across the room, talking to a man. They were standing close to one another, too close for my liking. It wasn't just the proximity that caught my attention, but the way they seemed so comfortable with each other. Amber was laughing, a sound I recognized, but there was something different about it tonight. It was louder, more animated, as if she was enjoying herself a bit too much. I couldn't help myself. I took a few steps closer, trying to remain unnoticed. That's when I saw it. Amber and the man were hugging. Not just a friendly embrace, but a full, lingering hug that seemed to last a little too long. My chest tightened. My heart dropped. I knew something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on what exactly felt off. I stood there, frozen for a moment, watching them. The man's face was one I didn't recognize. He wasn't someone from her usual circle, at least not someone I had ever heard about. Amber was always so open with me about who she spent time with, but this was different. The jealousy began to creep in, a cold, gnawing feeling that spread through my veins. But it wasn't just jealousy. It was a mix of confusion, hurt, and betrayal. I wanted to turn and leave, but I couldn't. I needed to know what was going on. I needed to confront this, whatever this was. As I slowly moved closer, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, Amber finally looked over her shoulder. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a split second, her expression faltered. She quickly regained composure, but it was too late. I had already seen enough. The man pulled away from her, and she turned to face me. There was a brief moment where neither of us spoke. I stood there, not knowing what to say. My mind raced, but all that came out was the simple question, "What's going on here, Amber?" She quickly stepped toward me, her smile faltering. "David," she said, her voice a little too calm. "It's not what you think." But I could already tell. I didn't need her to explain. The scene in front of me told me everything I needed to know. I could feel my trust in her slipping away, the foundation of our relationship beginning to crumble. Amber tried to explain it away as just a social gesture, an innocent meeting. But as I stood there, listening to her words, they didn't comfort me. They didn't make me feel better. They only served to deepen the chasm that was growing between us. As her words echoed in my mind, all I could think was one thing: I couldn't trust her anymore. The woman I had spent the last 16 years with was no longer the person I thought I knew. I could feel the cold weight of silence pressing down on us. Amber stood in front of me, her expression now defensive, but I couldn't focus on her words. Everything she said felt hollow, as if the truth was slipping through the cracks, just beyond my reach. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But how could I, after seeing what I just saw? The man's lingering hug, the way they spoke to each other, the intimacy that didn't belong to someone who was supposed to be just a business acquaintance. "David, please," Amber's voice broke through my thoughts. "It's not what you think. He's just a colleague. We've worked together for years. It's nothing more than a professional relationship." She seemed almost desperate, but it wasn't enough. I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the flicker of doubt, as if she was trying to convince both me and herself. "No, Amber." "I saw what I saw," I replied, my voice low but firm, almost detached. "You can't deny it. You were hugging him like he was more than just a colleague. It wasn't just a greeting or a goodbye. It was personal. And you know it." She stepped back, as if she had been struck, but she didn't argue. Instead, she took a deep breath, her face now flushed, her gaze shifting uncomfortably around the room, avoiding my eyes. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said quietly. It's been a long week, and I needed someone to talk to. Someone who would understand." The words hit me like a slap, but it wasn't the words that stung. It was the implication. She needed someone else. Not me. Not the man she'd shared her life with for the last 16 years. I had thought I was the one she leaned on, the one she trusted. But now it felt like all that was slipping away, unraveling right before my eyes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand answers. But what would that do? Would it change anything? Could I somehow go back to believing that the life I had built with Amber was real, that she truly loved me the way I loved her? "David, please," Amber continued, her voice trembling now, "I swear to you there's nothing between us. It was just a moment of weakness. You have to believe me. I'm sorry." I couldn't hear her anymore. I couldn't make sense of her apology. The more she talked, the more the words sounded rehearsed, like they were meant to fix something that couldn't be fixed. Every time she said, "I'm sorry," it felt more like a broken record than an honest plea. I stood there, feeling numb, unable to speak. My heart was beating erratically, but my mind had already shut down. I couldn't focus on anything except the vision of Amber and that man, standing so close, sharing something I should have been a part of. Something that now seemed like it was too late to reclaim. For the first time, I realized that the foundation of our marriage had been built on assumptions. We had assumed that our relationship was strong, that we were untouchable, that nothing could tear us apart. But now, that assumption felt naive. Trust, once shattered, didn't just repair itself with a few words. I had to look away. I couldn't bear to keep staring at her, pleading for my forgiveness. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her, even if I wanted to. The truth was, I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. "I need some time," I said, my voice cracking just slightly. I can't do this right now." I turned on my heel, walking away without looking back. I didn't want to see her face, her tears, her guilt-ridden expressions. The pain of seeing her that way was too much. I needed space. I needed to breathe. As I exited the hotel, I was overwhelmed by a mixture of anger, sadness, and disbelief. The night air hit my face, cool and sharp, but it did little to calm the storm inside me. I walked aimlessly through the streets, not knowing where I was going, only that I needed to escape. Every step felt heavier, like the weight of the betrayal was settling deep inside my chest, pressing down on my lungs. Amber, the woman I had trusted above all else, had broken something that I thought was unbreakable. And now, I had to figure out what came next. Could I ever trust her again? Could I forgive her? Or was this the end of everything we had worked for? The night felt endless. I don't remember exactly how I ended up back at the apartment. The walk through the quiet Miami streets had done nothing to soothe me. If anything, it had amplified the chaos in my mind. Thoughts raced through my head, fragments of our time together, the memories of our early days, our dreams, and the life we had built. But now, all of it seemed to twist and distort, slipping through my fingers like sand. It was as though everything had been a lie, or at least, a carefully constructed illusion. When I finally walked through the door, it felt hollow. Empty. The apartment, once a place of comfort and shared moments, now seemed alien. I stood at the threshold for a long time, unable to bring myself to take another step. The silence in the room was deafening. It was the kind of silence that gnaws at you, making every second feel like an eternity. I didn't know where Amber was. Maybe she was still at the hotel, waiting for me to return and give her another chance to explain. Or maybe she was back home, trying to piece together some sort of defense. Whatever the case, I couldn't bear the thought of seeing her right now. The mere idea of facing her again felt suffocating. I needed space, distance. A break from this overwhelming confusion. I took a seat on the couch, my mind still reeling from what had happened at the Ritz-Carlton. The image of Amber and that man, so casually close, kept replaying in my head like an endless loop. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had taken our marriage for granted. The foundation of trust that we had built over the years now felt like nothing more than a fragile house of cards, one gust of wind away from collapsing entirely. I ran my hand through my hair, trying to shake off the images that haunted me. Why did she do this? Why was she hiding something from me? The questions only seemed to multiply, but there were no answers, only silence. Amber's voice echoed in my head, but it was no use. Her apologies didn't matter. Her explanations didn't matter. What mattered was that everything had changed in that moment, and I didn't know how to fix it. I picked up my phone, scrolling mindlessly through the contacts. I could call someone, maybe a friend, a family member. But I didn't know who could understand what I was going through. I didn't know who would be able to make sense of this chaos, this sense of betrayal that was slowly consuming me from the inside out. I ended up sending a text message to Amber, a simple one that felt like it carried the weight of 1,000 words. I need time. I didn't expect a response right away. She would need time to process, just as I did. But I knew that things couldn't go back to the way they were. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal overnight. It takes years to build, and mere seconds to destroy. The hours passed, and I found myself pacing the apartment, unable to sit still. My mind wouldn't rest. I thought about the life we'd had, the future we'd planned. We had talked about growing old together, about traveling the world when the business was settled. But now, those conversations felt like distant dreams, disconnected from the reality of the situation. By the time the clock hit 3 a.m., I still hadn't received a reply from Amber. The silence between us was unbearable. I had no idea where she was or what she was doing, but I was certain of one thing: whatever was happening now, it was irreparable. I had seen the cracks in our relationship, and now, they were widening with every passing minute. I stood by the window, looking out at the city below, the lights flickering in the distance. Miami looked beautiful, as always, but it felt empty to me now. The city that had once been a backdrop to our life together now felt like a reminder of everything I had lost. Amber's face flashed in my mind again, the smile, the laughter, the way she had always made me feel like I was the most important person in her world. But now, all I could see was the hug, the man, the betrayal. I had trusted her more than anyone, and she had shattered that trust with her actions. How could I ever look at her the same way again? I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her, or if I even wanted to. But I knew that I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. The truth had been laid bare, and now, there was no going back. I turned away from the window, my reflection in the glass staring back at me, a man who was no longer sure of who he was, or what he had become. Everything I had known, everything I had worked for, was slipping through my fingers. The life we had built was crumbling, piece by piece, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. It was morning before I could finally settle into some kind of mental clarity, although it wasn't the kind I had hoped for. The weight of the events from the previous night pressed down on me even more heavily now. I hadn't slept a wink. Every time I closed my eyes, all I saw was Amber, her face full of shock and defensiveness, the man she had been with so casually standing there like nothing was wrong. As the sun rose over Miami, its light spilled into the apartment, casting long shadows across the room. It felt like a cruel reminder of the new reality I was waking up to. My once stable life had been upended in a matter of hours. The comfort, the familiarity, had evaporated. It felt as though I was living in a different world now, one where trust had been broken, and nothing could restore it. I hadn't heard from Amber. It was no surprise, I hadn't expected to. She likely needed time to process, just like I did. But the space between us felt like a chasm, growing wider with each passing minute. I thought back to the years we'd spent together, the small moments of joy, the support we had given each other through ups and downs. But none of that mattered now. I couldn't just erase the image of her with him, of the distance that had quietly grown between us over time, without either of us truly noticing. I had been blind to the cracks, and now they were impossible to ignore. I glanced at my phone again. There was still no message from her. A part of me wanted to reach out, to say something, anything, to break the silence. But what could I say? How could I even begin to put words to the mess that had become our marriage? Every attempt at communication seemed futile now, as if the space between us had turned into an impenetrable wall. Finally, I made a decision. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I couldn't keep living in the limbo of maybe. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a betrayal. And as much as it hurt, as much as I still loved Amber in some corner of my heart, I couldn't deny the truth anymore. I had to move on. I stood up, pacing the apartment one last time, the reality of my decision settling into my bones. I would have to face her eventually. There would be conversations that would bring all the raw emotions to the surface. But for now, all I could do was take that first step, away from the life I thought I knew, and toward something new. I didn't know where I was going yet, emotionally, or physically. Maybe I would leave Miami for a while, find some space to breathe. But I knew one thing: I couldn't stay here, trapped in the same old cycle. The hurt was too deep, and the trust was too broken. In the end, I had to let go. Not for her, but for me. As I looked out at the city again, the soft glow of the morning sun casting everything in a different light, I made peace with the uncertainty. The future wasn't clear, and the road ahead felt daunting, but it was mine to walk. And that, for the first time in a long while, felt like a step in the right direction. The chapters of my life with Amber had closed. The next chapter, whatever it may bring, was just beginning.